The mountain cabin near Aspen in the Colorado mountains had been a familiar place to Rachel Hansen since childhood. This cabin, which her father had purchased during his lifetime, was now managed by her mother Barbara and had become a special place where the family gathered several times a year. On the third weekend of October, during the beautiful season when autumn leaves painted the mountains in brilliant colors, 4 women and 2 children gathered at this mountain cabin. Rachel worked as a senior financial analyst at a major investment firm in Denver. Since her divorce 5 years ago, she had been building her career while raising her daughter Emma. Slender with an intellectual appearance, she always had perfectly styled brown hair and wore neat business attire. Even today, despite being at a mountain cabin, she wore a simple yet elegant cashmere sweater and slacks. Emma was a bright 12-year-old girl who had inherited her mother's intelligence and powers of concentration. With her long chestnut hair braided, she loved reading and piano playing above all else. This weekend too, she had packed several books and sheet music in her small backpack. Emma's grades were consistently at the top of her class, and she showed exceptional talent particularly in mathematics and literature. Her dream was to either work in the financial industry like her mother or pursue a career in music. Barbara was a former elementary school teacher who had retired 5 years ago after teaching children for 30 years. With her silver hair carefully curled and always wearing a warm smile, she was known in the neighborhood as a gentle woman. However, within the family, she was also someone who maintained a delicate balance. While she appeared to love both daughters equally on the surface, it was clear that she actually devoted more attention and affection to her younger daughter Jessica. Barbara considered Jessica's choice to be a stay-at-home mother ideal, and deep down, she harbored critical feelings about Rachel's career-focused lifestyle. Rachel's sister Jessica had the typical American beauty appearance with blonde hair and blue eyes, and had been the center of attention since high school. She married immediately after college graduation and now lived with her lawyer husband Michael and their 12-year-old son Ryan in an upscale residential area in the Denver suburbs. While Jessica appeared bright and sociable on the surface, she harbored complex feelings about Rachel's success deep down. In particular, she secretly burned with jealousy that Rachel was steadily advancing in her career while she was dedicating herself to the home as a housewife. Jessica's son Ryan was 12 years old, the same as Emma. Ryan was good at sports, particularly soccer, where he belonged to a local club team, but he didn't show the same academic excellence as Emma. Still, he was hardworking and studied diligently to meet his mother's expectations. Ryan and Emma had gotten along well since they were small. However, recently he had begun to feel pressure from his parents regarding academics. This weekend mountain cabin trip was planned as a harmonious family reunion on the surface. However, it actually held important significance. Both Emma and Ryan were preparing for entrance examinations to St. Paul Academy, Colorado's most prestigious private middle school. This school ranked among the top nationally for college admission results every year, and many of its graduates went on to prestigious universities like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. The entrance examination was extremely difficult, emphasizing personal interviews in addition to academic tests. In the living room of the mountain cabin, the fireplace fire warmly illuminated the family's faces. Through the large windows, you could see the snow-capped mountain scenery, and autumn silence enveloped the building. The aroma of roast beef that Barbara had prepared drifted from the kitchen, creating the atmosphere of an ideal family weekend. However, behind this beautiful scene, each person harbored different thoughts and emotions. Rachel sincerely wished for her daughter Emma's examination success and supported her studies during breaks from work. Meanwhile, Jessica was determined to ensure her son Ryan's acceptance by any means necessary. Barbara appeared to support both grandchildren on the surface, but deep down—
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
She more strongly hoped for Jessica and Ryan's success. One of the most attractive features of the mountain cabin was the private jacuzzi installed in the backyard. This facility, where one could soak in warm water while viewing the mountain scenery, was something the entire family looked forward to. After dinner on Saturday, the the family was relaxing in the mountain cabin's living room. The fireplace fire warmly lit the room, and outside, the autumn night breeze swayed the pine trees. The aroma of herbal tea that Barbara had brewed filled the room. It seemed like a perfect family gathering time. "You know what?" Jessica suddenly spoke up. "Let's all get in the jacuzzi tonight. Since we're at the mountain cabin after all." Emma looked up from the book she was reading, her eyes sparkling. "Really? That sounds fun. But we can't all go together," Rachel said in a practical voice. "That jacuzzi has a limit of 4 people, and there are children too." Barbara stood up and looked toward the jacuzzi from the kitchen window. "That's right. We should take turns. How about Jessica and I go first for a short time, then Rachel and Emma, and finally Ryan?" "I'm fine going last," Ryan said hesitantly. "I'm tired from soccer practice, and I want to go to bed early." However, a slight tension crossed Jessica's expression. "Ryan, it's a family trip after all. But if you're not feeling well, you don't have to force yourself." Rachel found her sister's reaction strange but didn't think deeply about it. "Then Mom and Jessica can go first, and we'll take our time later." Around 8 o'clock in the evening, Barbara and Jessica headed to the jacuzzi. Rachel was washing dishes in the kitchen while watching the two of them through the window. They seemed to be discussing something, but the distance made their conversation inaudible. Interestingly, they came up from the jacuzzi after a considerably shorter time than usual, only about 15 minutes. "Already finished?" Rachel asked. "It was getting a bit cold," Barbara answered. "And we wanted you to have plenty of time to use it too." Jessica agreed. "That's right. Emma will surely enjoy it. Children love long baths, don't they?" At 9 o'clock, Rachel and Emma put on bathrobes and headed to the jacuzzi. The mountain night sky sparkled with countless stars, and the jacuzzi's warm water provided a pleasant contrast to the night's chill. "Mom, the stars are beautiful," Emma exclaimed in admiration. "They really are. You can't see scenery like this in the city." Rachel sat next to her daughter, enjoying this rare relaxing time. The two relaxed in the jacuzzi for about 45 minutes. Emma talked about her school friends, piano lessons, and the interview approaching next week. "Mom, what if I can't pass?" Emma murmured anxiously. "It'll be fine, Emma. You're well prepared, and I'm sure you'll have a wonderful interview." Rachel gently embraced her daughter's shoulder. "Whatever the result, I'm proud of you." After getting out of the jacuzzi, the two put on bathrobes and returned to the mountain cabin. In the living room, Barbara and Jessica were watching TV while drinking wine. Ryan was reading a book on the sofa but seemed to be listening to the mother's conversation. "How was it?" Jessica asked. "It was wonderful," Emma answered. "The water felt good, and the stars were beautiful." "I'm glad," Barbara smiled. "You can go in again before breakfast tomorrow." That night, the family headed to their respective rooms. Rachel and Emma used the corner room on the second floor, Barbara and Jessica each had rooms on the first floor, and Ryan was to spend the night in the small loft room. However, something strange happened in the middle of the night. Rachel woke up with slight itching. At first she thought it was a mosquito bite, but she noticed several small red spots appearing on her arms and legs. Emma, sleeping next to her, also seemed to be scratching her body occasionally. The next morning, Sunday, the situation became clearer during breakfast. Red rashes had appeared more clearly on Rachel's arms and legs than the night before. Emma was the same, with red spots spreading particularly on her neck and arms. "Mom, I feel itchy," Emma said while eating pancakes for breakfast. Rachel looked at her daughter's neck and became worried. "It seems worse than last night." Barbara put down her coffee cup and came closer. "Let me see." She looked at Rachel and Emma's rashes and thought for a while. "It might be an allergy. Sometimes people react to mountain air or plants. I had a similar experience when I was young." Jessica also got up from the table to look. Oh, you're right. But we're perfectly fine. Ryan's okay too, aren't you? Ryan nodded but seemed somewhat restless. I'm completely fine. It must be a difference in constitution, Barbara concluded. Rachel has had sensitive skin since childhood, and Emma must have inherited that. The breakfast conversation naturally shifted to the topic of the children's entrance examinations. Jessica began talking in detail about her son's preparation status. Ryan has improved so much in mathematics. Particularly with algebra problems, his teacher has been praising him. Barbara looked at her grandson proudly. That's wonderful. St. Paul Academy emphasizes mathematics, so I'm sure he'll make a good impression. Emma showed a slightly anxious expression. She was also good at mathematics, but hearing about Ryan seemed to suddenly shake her confidence. Emma is good at piano, so she can appeal through the arts, Jessica added. However, to Rachel, those words seemed to contain a hint of sarcasm. Both academics and arts are important, Rachel supported her daughter. Emma gets excellent grades in all subjects. That's true, but in actual interviews, many children get nervous and can't demonstrate their abilities, Jessica continued. Especially introverted children tend to be at a disadvantage. Rachel felt uncomfortable with her sister's words. Emma certainly had introverted aspects, but she wasn't the kind of child who would be disadvantaged in interviews. Rather, she had the ability to give thoughtful and accurate answers. There's no point worrying about the interview, Barbara said mediatorily. Both are working hard, so let's leave the results to heaven. After breakfast, the rash began to spread further. Small red spots appeared on Rachel's face too, and Emma began to develop a slight fever. I think we should go to the hospital after all, Rachel suggested. That's overdoing it, Jessica laughed it off. It's just an allergy. Getting antihistamines from the pharmacy would be enough. Barbara agreed. That's right, we can see how it goes first. It's also difficult to go down the mountain. However, by afternoon, the symptoms had clearly worsened. Emma's rash had spread from her neck to her face, and her fever was rising. Rachel herself began to feel joint pain. This isn't a normal allergy, Rachel declared. Let's go to the hospital right now. Ryan suddenly stood up at that moment. I'll come too. Why? Jessica looked at her son in surprise. You're perfectly fine, aren't you? But I'm worried about Emma, Ryan's voice had urgency. Eventually, everyone decided to go to the nearest town's hospital together. In the car, Rachel was concerned about Ryan's behavior. He was quieter than usual and occasionally looked at Emma with worry. Meanwhile, Jessica and Barbara appeared to be worried on the surface, but somehow seemed to have an attitude as if it were someone else's problem. The emergency department at Rocky Mountain General Hospital was relatively quiet for a Sunday afternoon. The reception nurse, seeing Emma suffering from rash and fever, immediately guided them to an examination room. Rachel held her daughter's hand while explaining the course of symptoms to the doctor. The attending physician, Dr. Smith, was an experienced emergency doctor. He initially looked at Rachel and Emma's symptoms and thought it was a typical allergic reaction. Did you come into contact with any new foods or chemicals from last night until this morning? Dr. Smith asked. We just used the mountain cabin's jacuzzi, Rachel answered. But other family members are perfectly fine. A jacuzzi, the doctor frowned. Sometimes people react to water quality or cleaning agents. Let's do a blood test just to be sure. In the waiting room, Barbara and Jessica sat reading magazines. While they appeared worried on the surface, from Rachel's perspective, they seemed somehow too calm. I hope it's nothing serious, Barbara sighed. Tomorrow is Monday, and Rachel has work too. That's right, Jessica agreed. Emma might have to miss school too. At such an important time before the entrance exam. Ryan sat in a corner chair, hugging his knees and staying silent. Occasionally, he would look anxiously toward the examination room, then look down again. "Ryan, are you okay?" Barbara called out to her grandson. "Yes, I'm okay," Ryan answered quietly, but his voice was trembling. An hour later, Dr. Smith came out of the examination room. However, his expression was clearly different from his initial calm demeanor. He had deep wrinkles on his forehead and was clutching the test result papers. "Miss Hanson," the doctor called Rachel. "I need to speak with you." Rachel felt her heart beating rapidly as she returned to the examination room. Emma was lying in bed receiving an IV, but the rash appeared to have worsened even more. "The blood test results are in," Dr. Smith began gravely. "This is not just a skin reaction." Rachel's blood drained from her face. "What do you mean?" "A special chemical substance contained in industrial detergent has been detected in both your and your daughter's blood. Specifically, a solvent called trichloroethylene. This is a chemical substance normally used for degreasing and cleaning metals, and when it comes into direct contact with human skin, it causes these kinds of symptoms." Rachel was speechless. "Industrial detergent? I don't remember touching anything like that." "This chemical substance is colorless and odorless," the doctor continued his explanation. "Moreover, judging from the detected concentration, you were exposed to a considerable amount of the chemical substance for a long time. It's highly likely it was mixed into the jacuzzi water. But other family members are perfectly fine." Dr. Smith nodded with a serious expression. "That's the problem. If it were accidental contamination, symptoms should have appeared in everyone who used the jacuzzi. However, the fact that only you and your daughter have symptoms means..." The doctor continued, choosing his words carefully. "We must consider the possibility that the chemical substance was intentionally added. This is not a medical accident, but a potential crime." Rachel leaned back in her chair. The events from last night rushed through her mind. Her mother and Jessica getting out of the jacuzzi quickly, their unnatural reactions this morning, and the mention of the entrance exam. "I recommend reporting this to the police," the doctor said quietly. "Also, testing the jacuzzi water quality is necessary. Fortunately, we were able to start treatment early, so I think we can avoid serious after-effects, but several days of hospitalization will be necessary." Rachel tried to take out her trembling cell phone, but the examination room door suddenly opened. Barbara entered with a worried look. "How was it? Is Emma okay?" Rachel stared at her mother's face. It was her usual gentle expression, but now it looked different somehow. "Mom," Rachel's voice was shaking. "According to the doctor, this is poisoning from industrial detergent." Barbara's face stiffened for a moment. "Industrial detergent? That's ridiculous. There's nothing like that at the mountain cabin." "But it was detected in the blood test." Rachel carefully observed her mother's reaction. "The doctor says it was mixed into the jacuzzi." "Mixed? It must be an accident, right? Maybe previous users left something behind." A slight agitation could be felt in Barbara's voice. At that moment, Jessica also entered the examination room. "How is Emma's condition?" When Dr. Smith explained the situation, Jessica showed an exaggerated surprised expression. "Oh my! How terrible! But it's an accident, right? Surely no one would intentionally." "That's the problem," the doctor interrupted. "I heard that you also used the jacuzzi last night, but you're perfectly fine." "We were only there for a short time," Jessica answered quickly. "And there are constitutional differences too." Barbara agreed. "That's right, Rachel has had weak skin since childhood. Emma inherited that." However, Dr. Smith shook his head. "Reactions to this chemical substance are not related to constitution. Symptoms appear in proportion to exposure time and concentration. Even with short-term use, symptoms would definitely appear if the concentration were this high." Ryan, who had been waiting in the waiting room, appeared at the entrance to the examination room. His face was pale, and he clearly seemed to want to say something. "Ryan, what's wrong?" Jessica noticed her son. Ryan started to speak but fell silent again after receiving his mother's sharp gaze. However, Emma weakly raised her hand from the bed and called to him. "Ryan, come here." Ryan hesitantly approached Emma's bedside. Emma, hindered by the 4-tube, still managed to grasp her cousin's hand. "It's okay, don't worry," Emma said gently. At that moment, tears overflowed from Ryan's eyes. "Emma, I'm sorry." Ryan, what are you saying?" Jessica hurriedly approached her son. However, Ryan looked up at his mother and said in a trembling voice, "I know what Mom and Grandma did in the jacuzzi last night." The air in the examination room froze. Barbara and Jessica's faces drained of color, and Rachel gasped. "Ryan, what are you saying?" Jessica's voice cracked. "I saw it," Ryan continued while crying. "Mom brought some kind of container from the garage and put it in the jacuzzi. And I heard you and Grandma talking about, now Emma won't be able to take the entrance exam." Rachel stood up. "What did you say?" Dr. Smith quietly called a nurse and also contacted security. From his years of experience, he understood that this situation could develop into a serious crime. "Ryan, you mustn't say such nonsense," Barbara desperately tried to persuade her grandson. "You must have been dreaming." However, Ryan shook his head. "It wasn't a dream. I was scared and couldn't say anything, but I can't bear to watch Emma suffer like this." Jessica grabbed her son's arm firmly. "Ryan, do you understand what you're saying? Are you going to treat your mother like a criminal?" "Not a criminal," Ryan looked at his mother. "But hurting Emma is wrong. To get into St. Paul Academy, doing something like this." Rachel couldn't suppress the trembling throughout her body. It was difficult to accept the reality that her mother and sister had mixed industrial detergent into the jacuzzi to hurt her daughter. However, seeing Ryan's testimony, the doctor's diagnosis, and their agitated behavior, the truth was clear. "Until the police arrive, no one may leave the hospital," Dr. Smith said in a stern tone. "This will be treated as a serious assault case." The police arrived after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Detective Michael Davis from the Rocky Mountain Police Department was a veteran investigator with 20 years of experience. He conducted individual interviews with all family members in the hospital's conference room. Rachel was called first. She explained the events from last night in chronological detail. How her mother and sister used the jacuzzi for a short time, how only they used it for a long time, and about the symptoms the next morning. "Were there any problems in family relationships?" Detective Davis asked. Rachel showed a complex expression. "My mother doted on my sister Jessica. Since childhood, I felt that my sister was more favored. But I never imagined they would do something like this." Ryan was called next. He was nervous but summoned courage to begin telling the truth. "Last night, I couldn't sleep and was reading a book. Then I heard Mom and Grandma whispering." According to Ryan's testimony, Jessica and Barbara were having a secret conversation in the mountain cabin's garage. There, Ryan overheard a shocking plan. Mom said, "Tomorrow there are only 3 days until the interview. This is our only chance," and Grandma answered, "If Emma gets sick, she won't be able to take the interview." The detective continued questioning carefully. "So what did you do?" "I got scared and hid behind the garage. Then Mom brought a small white container and said, 'If we use this, it'll be certain. But we should only stay in the jacuzzi for a short time and get out quickly.'" Ryan continued in a tearful voice. "Grandma said, 'It's for Ryan's future. If he gets into St. Paul Academy, a wonderful life awaits him,' and Mom also said, 'Emma is too smart. She's a threat as competition.'" The detective recorded Ryan's testimony in detail and then asked about the chemical substance. "Do you remember anything about that white container? There was something written in English on the container, but I couldn't read it well." But Mom said, I borrowed it from Michael's company. Jessica's husband Michael was in charge of legal affairs at a major chemical company and was in a position to access industrial chemicals. This testimony also clarified how the chemical substance was obtained. In Barbara's interview, she initially denied everything completely. It's my grandson's delusion. Ryan has been saying strange things lately due to stress. However, when Detective Davis mentioned specific evidence, her attitude began to change. Even if that were true, we only wished for our daughter's happiness. Ryan needs a better environment. Jessica was more stubborn than her mother. My son's testimony can't be trusted. It's a child's imagination. However, when the police announced they would conduct water quality testing of the mountain cabin's jacuzzi, her face turned pale. Testing? Is that really necessary? To prevent evidence tampering, we've already sealed the scene and collected samples, the detective answered calmly. That night, Rachel tried to face this unbelievable reality while caring for Emma at the hospital. Emma, receiving N4, had stable symptoms but still had rashes. Mom, what will happen to Grandma and Aunt Jessica? Emma asked weakly. The police are investigating now. You focus on recovering, Rachel held her daughter's hand. The next day, Monday morning, there was a call from the police. Trichloroethylene had been detected at high concentrations in the jacuzzi water, and furthermore, it was discovered from Michael's company's inventory management records that part of the chemical substance had been taken out over the weekend. Detective Davis revisited the hospital and reported the latest investigation status to Rachel. Your husband, that is, Jessica's husband Michael, didn't know his wife had taken out the chemical substance. He is completely uninvolved. And my mother and sister. Once evidence is gathered, we'll request arrest warrants. Charges of serious assault and illegal use of dangerous substances. That afternoon, Ryan, accompanied by his mother Jessica, came to visit Emma. However, Jessica waited outside the hospital room, and only Ryan visited Emma. Emma, I'm really sorry, Ryan apologized while crying. Emma showed a weak but gentle smile. Ryan, you're not at fault. Rather, thank you for telling the truth. But my mother and grandmother hurt you. You're different, Emma grasped her cousin's hand. You did the right thing. That's what matters. Rachel watched this